Welcome to the program, and welcome to Stu Bergier.
Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome, Stu.
And Donald Trump went on Meet the Press this weekend.
Yes.
This is what you're supposed to do. If you're going to be... Yeah, apparently so. We're just supposed to reflexively go to NBC News whenever...
Those days are over.
I thought they were too.
No, he has to do them, but...
No, well, does he? Does he have to do them?
Yeah, I think he should do a little of everything. You know what I mean? I think you shouldn't just go to podcasts. You know, that's what Barack Obama did. Remember? And he was like doing interviews with, who was that woman in the bathtub? And you're like, okay, this is ridiculous. You don't have to do the bathtub one, but I think you should go on places where
it's
adversarial. It's adversarial. You're not going to get a good interview. I think that's required as president.
I agree with that.
As president, not necessarily
even as a candidate, I think it's something you should do. I mean, I think Kamala Harris should have done an adversarial interview during the campaign at some point, which she did not do.
She didn't do interviews.
I mean, she wasn't doing anything for a very long time.
Right,
then they switched strategies, and it did not help. No. In fact, it went the opposite direction.
No,
they really. I do wonder. There is their alternate world. What that election would have looked like if she just continued to do nothing. I think it would have been closer. I think if she never did an interview, it would have been closer.
I think you're right on that. I think you're right. The
It's
more
incredible
she
to say.
spoke, the more you were like, oh, dear God, no.
No, don't do that. Because I think they correctly realized that there were a certain amount of people who were very worried about a candidate that couldn't do an interview. Right? And so they tried to solve that by doing interviews, and that what they should have done is just let those people go. Like, realize they're not going to vote for you and hope.
Has anybody noticed? And I am biased because I've been talking to him off air, and watching him talk to a lot of people, without cameras around, and his grasp on deep subjects has changed a great deal. Have you noticed? Donald Trump in interviews is not the same guy he was in 2020?
Yeah, I think that's true. He certainly seems to be more focused and has a real plan as to what he's going to do. As we know, it's directly Project 2025, which he commissioned. We should remember, of course. No, it does seem like you made the description, I think it was last week, which has been sticking with me, which is after 2020, he just spent 4 years just like, this isn't going to happen to me again. Like, I'm going to make sure these things, if I get if I'm able to become president again, I'm not going to be hit by all of these.
I'm not going to be surprised ever again.
Yeah, right. And it seems like he's coming in.
He's ready.
Ready for this.
Yeah, he's ready. Mm-hmm. The other thing that happened to him that I think has cut down all of his slams and everything else. I mean, he still does. But you'll notice he's not as crazy on things, and I think that's...
What do you mean crazy on things? Like, just not as, worried about,
name-calling.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's not like that as much because I think he's... I think it really... This is just my speculation. Put yourself in his shoes. In 2014, everybody on both sides loved him, right? Maybe not as the president, but they loved him.
Like,
everybody,
as a celebrity, he was
and
a big
he was
celebrity.
A great guy, and he's a philanthropist, and he's done so much. And then he gets in, and everybody that were his friends, that knew him and knew what he was like, they all of a sudden turned on him. And I think that just took him by absolute surprise. And he had to keep punching and punching and punching and punching. And I think now a couple of things have happened. One, he just stopped caring because you do care. No matter what anybody says, you do care. And he stopped caring. And then I think when he was shot, I think he found his purpose. And I also think in the following months, he kind of became cool. He became the guy who could go on Saturday Night Live and make fun of himself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And everybody would accept him. He became kind of mainstream again. And so I don't think he feels like he has to punch anymore.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have noticed a difference in him. I mean, I think getting shot.
No matter what
was
critical. That was critical.
It
was change.
Yeah. I mean, it has to change you, right?
Yeah.
And so he's going into this with a real plan. And one part of his plan, this is going to be clip 4, is his plan to end birthright citizenship. This is, obviously highly controversial. Many people on the left do not like it at all. They asked him about it on Meet the Press with, Kristen Welker?
Yeah, somebody that nobody's ever heard of because everybody who have heard of has no credibility.
There you go.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. If somebody sets just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Okay, so notice what happened here. She comes to the 14th. Stu, tell me why the 14th Amendment was first written. What is that really about?
I mean, was it wrong to say slavery?
No, slavery.
Okay.
Yeah, it was written.
You looked at me like I was going to.
No.
Okay.
No. It was written for slavery.
Yeah.
It was written because all citizens could vote and, you have certain rights, blah, blah, blah. And so the Southerners, the Democrats, said, well, they're not citizens. They're not citizens. They're from Africa.
So they can't vote.
Yeah, so they can't vote. Okay. If you were born here, even if you were born a slave, you're a citizen. That's what that was about. That was not
illegal immigration.
Illegal immigration. Come over here, get into a hospital, have a baby, and now, congratulations, everybody is a citizen. That we are the only one that has it. And the only reason we do have it is because of slavery. It was a way to make sure the Democrats didn't just cut blacks out of the vote again. That's what's so crazy. And so notice he says, we may have to go back to the people. Can you just change that? Well, no, it's a constitutional amendment. So we may have to go back to the people. He says that first. Her immediate response is through executive action. No, I just said we may have to go back to the people.
There are several parts in this interview where she doesn't even, it doesn't seem like she's even listening to him.
She's not.
She's got this idea of what Donald Trump says in this moment, and she's like already acted it out with her producers multiple times, so she's just not even listening.
Yes.
And I also
that's why none of them have any credibility, because there's not an honest exchange. There is no honest questions. He just said we may have to go. He volunteered. We may have to go back to the American people for that. So you're suggesting that maybe it would be a constitutional amendment. Well, yeah, I think we would have to do it. I might, if I get stuck, I might try to find a way to do it through executive action. But it is a constitutional amendment. So yes, that's an honest conversation.
Right.
That's not what she did.
No. Do we have this clip handy again to play it again? I want to see if you catch this one little bit in this. This is clip 4 again. Listen to her verbiage of the 14th Amendment.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th?
Is that a quote? All persons born in the United States are citizens. That's what she said the 14th Amendment says.
Now that you ask me, I doubt it is.
Right.
But I don't. Have you looked it up?
I have it.
Okay.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States. So she leaves that out, but not necessarily important to the conversation. But the next part is, comma, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, comma, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The whole 14th Amendment argument, and you might disagree with this part of it, is that phrase, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, means that illegal immigrants are not included. Now,
How? How?
Well, they're not subject to that jurisdiction.
So in other words, if mom and baby
slaves would be.
Right. If mom and baby were here, then they would be subject to that jurisdiction. But the family would not be. Because they're someplace else?
I think the argument, and again, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on the 14th Amendment argument here.
I'm going to tell you, but I absolutely am so far away from an expert.
Right, okay.
That you might as well talk to a fisherman.
What I have heard is people make this argument before.
Okay.
And the argument basically is to be subject to that jurisdiction does not mean that you don't, everyone, of course, has to follow the laws of a country that you move into. But to be subject to that jurisdiction means you have to have a basis in the country. So it's not like you just cross the border and, hey, I'm now a subject of this jurisdiction. You're a visitor, right? Or in this case, a criminal crossing the border.
Right.
So you would not get necessarily those protections of that 14th Amendment.
May I just say, the only thing I hate the founders for is their use of commas.
That's a good point.
Stop with the use of commas. Could you please, for the love of Pete, the right to keep and bear arms, comma, under a well-run regulated militia, comma, shall not be infringed. Couldn't you stop with the commas?
Right.
It makes it too complex now. Stop with the commas.
It's very true. But I think regardless of what you think about the argument of the 14th Amendment and people who believe illegal immigrants would not be grandfathered into that, if it's foundational to the argument, why would you skip it?
Right.
Right?
Right.
You have to bring that up because.
Could you do me a favor?
Yes.
Do you have ChatGPT?
Yeah,
or something like that?
Yeah.
Grok or something?
Yeah.
Type that in and ask what that means.
Sure. We can do that here. It'll take me a second, obviously.
But yeah. All right.
Do you want to go on to the next clip, or you want to stick?
Yeah,
to
let's go to the next clip.
Okay. Next one is on Ukraine and what needs to happen with Ukraine. This is again Trump on Meet the Press.
There are people being killed in that war at levels that nobody's ever seen before. You have to go back to the Second World War, and even that, if you take a look at, and you know what it is? It's the soldiers largely. The cities have been emptied out and demolished. The country has been demolished. If I won that election, which you know how I feel about it, I won't get into it because we don't need to start that argument. I think it's an easy argument. It was really proven even more conclusively by the win that I had on this one. But
you did get a point, sir.
Well, that's your opinion, but I disagree with it. Had I kept control, number one, Israel wouldn't have happened. Number two, Ukraine would have never happened. It would have never happened, Ukraine, Russia. But the number of people that are being killed, soldiers, young, beautiful soldiers, hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. And it's very interesting. It's level, totally level. The battlefield's totally level. You know what's happening? Yeah. The only thing that stops a bullet, you know what it is a body, a human body. And the people that are being killed, hundreds of thousands on both sides. Russia's lost probably 500,000. Ukraine's lost higher than they say, probably 400,000. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of bodies laying all over fields. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and it should have never been allowed to happen. Biden should have been able to stop it.
Amen. He's absolutely right. And when this is over and the body count is actually revealed, and when you see BlackRock there rebuilding, when you see all of these friends of the Bidens rebuilding, when you see BlackRock owning the farmland, then maybe we'll start to have some idea of how grotesque this really was. So let's go to ChatGPT and just see what it says about the 14th Amendment and that particular phrase between commas.
And I will say our robot betters seem to have summarized this the same way that I understood it. Okay. So historically, the consensus among most legal scholars and historical practices has been the phrase excludes only a few categories. This is the phrase of not subject to the jurisdiction in the United States. Those categories are children of foreign diplomats, enemy soldiers, and some Native American tribes who maintain their tribal jurisdiction. Legal precedent has largely supported the view that children born in the U.S. to foreign citizens are indeed U.S. citizens, regardless of the immigration status of the parents. Then, some conservatives argue, subject to the jurisdiction thereof excludes individuals who are in the country illegally, as they are not legally subject to the U.S. jurisdiction in the same way as lawful residents or citizens.
Yes.
They claim that because illegal immigrants have not entered the country and remained in it legally, that they or their children should not automatically receive citizenship. That is, my understanding of the debate. And again, you can say you disagree with the conservative side of that debate. Right. Many do. But to actually skip the phrase that is important to the debate when talking to the man who's arguing the conservative side of that debate is journalism malpractice at the very least. And I think it's intentional. I believe that it is intentional, but I don't know.
Wait, I think it's NBC.
It's not intentional. It's NBC. It's just what we are.
It's just what they do.
Yes.
Of course it is.
And that's, again, it goes back to our original conversation as opposed to whether you go and meet the press or not. Do you need to go to a place that's intentionally doing things like that? I mean, and that is inexcusable. For the one phrase that's important to the debate you leave out of the amendment? I mean, it's obviously intentional.
I like the fact that the president was calm, cool, collected, didn't name call, went through that whole thing. Wasn't a fair interview. It was exactly what you would expect. But at least he went and talked to the other side.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing to talk to the other side. I think it's worth doing adversarial interviews. I just wish he'd had a little honesty, I guess. I feel like when you went back on the show with Russert,
yes,
that's what you got.
Yes.
It wasn't an interview you liked. A lot of times he took things, I think, and took the Democratic side a little unfairly, but he wouldn't eliminate the part of the amendment that is the debate.
Yeah.
He would not have done that.
No. And he would give you there were times that Russert, you'd be pissed off at him because it was your guy. But you'd also be cheering for the other side because he was fair. He was even-handed.
Beck.
That's all that really we ask for.